Mitchell Weiser and Bonnie Bickwit were two 16-year-old teenagers from Brooklyn, New York. They were passionate about music and had been planning to attend the Summer Jam Music Festival in Watkins Glen, New York. On July 27, 1973, they set off hitchhiking to the festival. They were last seen at a rest stop on Interstate 81 in Pennsylvania on July 28, 1973. Since that day, no one has ever heard from or seen them again. There have been many theories about what happened to them, but in the year 2000, a shocking revelation was made. Here is their story. Mitch and Bonnie were two bright and promising teenagers who met and fell in love at their high school for gifted students, John Dewey High School in Brooklyn. Mitch was 16 and Bonnie was 15. Mitch worked at a photography shop on Coney Island, while Bonnie worked that summer at Camp Well-Met in Narrowsburg, New York. They were both from stable, loving, middle-class Jewish families residing in Brooklyn. Mitch was from Midwood, and Bonnie lived in Borough Park. According to Mitch's best friend, Mitchell was a very ethical kid, almost honest to a fault. I don't believe that they ran away or they did anything like that. I always figured foul play was involved. They were typical good kids, working average teenager summer jobs and living normal, happy lives. Earlier that summer, they had exchanged wedding rings and considered themselves husband and wife, even though they were only teenagers. On July 27, 1973, Mitch and Bonnie set out to hitchhike to Watkins Glen, New York, to attend the Summer Jam concert. They were excited to see their favorite bands. Summer Jam 73 was a one-day rock festival held on July 28, 1973, at the Watkins Glen Grand Prix Raceway in Watkins Glen, New York. The festival was headlined by the Allman Brothers Band, the Grateful Dead, and the Band, with additional performances by the Beach Boys, Johnny Winter, Blood, Sweat and Tears, and many others. The festival was attended by an estimated 600,000 people, making it the largest single-day concert in history at the time. The event was also notable for its chaotic traffic situation, which led to widespread traffic jams and gridlock. Despite the logistical challenges, Summer Jam 73 was a major success. The festival was widely praised for its music and atmosphere, and it helped to solidify the reputation of Watkins Glen as a major concert venue. Mitch, who at the time was 16, left home on Thursday afternoon to attend the concert. He had originally planned to go with his friend Larry Marion, but Larry's mother had decided at the last minute that she wasn't comfortable with him making the trip. Mitch had already taken time off from his internship with a photography studio on Coney Island, so he wasn't willing to miss the concert. He decided to give Larry's ticket to his 15-year-old girlfriend, Bonnie, who had been spending her summer working as a mother's helper at Camp Well-Met in the Catskill Mountains. Bonnie was excited to see Mitch and go to the concert, but she had also been feeling exploited by her employer. Mitch's mother, Shirley, wasn't thrilled about him going to Watkins Glen, especially once she learned that Larry's mother wasn't allowing him to go. She and Mitch's sister, Susan, both tried to persuade him to stay home. However, Mitch remained determined. As he headed out the door, Shirley told him to wait a minute and she would give him some extra money to make sure he had enough to get there and back safely. Mitch ignored her and left with just $25 in his pocket. Mitch took a bus to Narrowsburg, the town nearest to Camp Well-Met. From there, he took a cab to the campgrounds, arriving shortly before midnight on Thursday night. By the time he arrived at the camp, he had already spent almost all of the money he had on him. When he called home to let his family know that he had made it safely to Camp Well-Met, his sister was concerned to hear that he was almost out of money. She begged him not to go to the concert, but Mitch told her he would be fine and said he would see her on Sunday. This was the last time his family spoke with him. In the other side, Bonnie had asked her employer for time off to attend the concert, but he had refused. Angry, Bonnie quit on the spot. She told her boss that she would be back on Monday to pick up her final check and her belongings. Mitch and Bonnie spent the night at Camp Well-Met and had breakfast in the dining hall on Friday morning before setting out on their journey. They stood along the road running through the campground and waved at passing vehicles until one of them stopped. A man driving a truck picked them up and drove them into Narrowsburg. They headed for the side of Highway 97. Bonnie had made a sign with their intended destination written on it. They held the sign up as they waited for another ride. The truck driver pulled away, and the teenagers were last seen standing alongside the road with their sign. This was the last time anyone saw them alive. When Bonnie and Mitchell left the camp, they were seen by their friends. Bonnie was described as wearing a peasant blouse, a bandana and blue jeans, and Mitchell was wearing his trademark ponytail slicked back. He had a t-shirt, jeans, and boots on. Mitchell's family waited up all night for him to arrive home on Sunday, as planned, but he never came through the door. Bonnie's parents were away on vacation in Cape Cod and returned home on Tuesday to a phone call asking if Bonnie had arrived home. They were confused because they thought she was still at camp. Mitchell's family told them that she had quit a few days earlier and left to attend the festival with Mitchell. Bonnie's family went straight to her summer camp in Narrowsburg, but when they saw that neither of the teens were there and no one had heard from them, they went straight to the local authorities to report them missing. The police initially believed that the couple had run away together, and so they didn't take the case too seriously. They saw Bonnie and Mitch as two young teens in love who had run away, which was increasingly becoming the norm in the 1970s, as young people were questioning the norm and rebelling against it. They felt that the teens would turn up again soon. Bonnie's parents received a letter written by Bonnie just 3 days before she left for the concert. The letter described how she wanted freedom and to be allowed to enjoy her summer, if only her parents would trust her with the responsibility of being more independent. After reading the letter, Bonnie's mother felt that she would be gone for the entire summer. She understood that her daughter wanted freedom, but with the mysterious circumstances surrounding the disappearance, she felt that there was more to it. She didn't feel as though Bonnie and Mitchell had disappeared of their own accord. The parents initially decided to wait, thinking that this was just a rebellious act from both teenagers and hoping that they would soon return. However, as the start of the new school year approached and there was still no sign of Bonnie or Mitch, their parents began to fear that something horrible had happened to them. It had been more than 6 weeks since anyone had heard from either teenager, and law enforcement still refused to take their disappearances seriously. The Bickwits and the Weisers were forced to launch their own investigation into what had happened to the pair. They did everything they could think of to publicize the case, writing hundreds of letters to police departments and newspapers around the country, and mailing out thousands of missing person flyers. All attempts were unsuccessful. The police stayed firm to the theory that they simply ran away. They pointed out that Bonnie had been unhappy with her job and had returned to her Borough Park home while her parents were on vacation and retrieved some money she had been saving. Bonnie's parents, however, were doubtful. They knew that Bonnie only had about $80 in savings, hardly enough to finance a life on the run. They also knew that Bonnie was a responsible and level-headed young woman, and they didn't believe that she would simply abandon her life without a good reason. Years went by, and no one heard or talked to the couple. Bonnie's parents decided to stay living in the same home in case they decided to come back. However, in the year 1987, 13 years after the couple disappeared, Mitchell's father received a collect call from somebody identifying themselves as Bonnie. Mitchell's father was ecstatic, and he said himself that you could tell on the phone how excited he was. However, before the operator could connect them, the person had hung up. His father blamed himself and regretted acting so excited as he felt he had scared Bonnie away. The caller never phoned back and has never been identified. There were many inconsistencies during the years in this case, and several significant events have taken place since then. Here is a brief chronology of the events. In 1973, Bonnie and Mitchell disappeared after attending a concert at Glen Park. The Sullivan County Sheriff's Department investigated the case, but failed to conduct interviews with crucial individuals involved, including Bonnie and Mitchell's friends and family. Additionally, the original files and dental records from the case were lost or destroyed. The parents hired a psychic who claimed to have visions about the case, stating that the numbers 23 and 34 were significant. He also mentioned having visions of a rock quarry near the cemetery. In 2005, a witness came forward with a story suggesting that the driver of the van truck that transported Bonnie may have been responsible for their deaths. However, this claim was later proven to lack sufficient evidence. Finally, in the year 2000, Mitch and Bonnie's disappearance was featured on an episode of the MSNBC television show Missing Persons in October. Following the episode's airing, several potential tips were called into investigators. One of these tips, from a man named Alan Smith, caught the detectives' attention, leading them to travel to Alan's home in Providence, Rhode Island for an interview. According to Alan's account, he had attended the Watkins Glen Summer Jam and hitched a ride home in an orange Volkswagen van. He claimed that on the day after the concert, which was a Sunday, Mitch and Bonnie had also hitched a ride in the same van. Alan couldn't recall the driver's name, but remembered that the Volkswagen had a Pennsylvania license plate. However, Alan's memory of the events was hazy due to being under the influence of drugs at the time. In contrast, Bonnie and Mitch appeared to be sober and not using any substances. During the ride, the van's driver picked up another man who was heavily intoxicated and remained unconscious in the back of the van throughout the journey. At some point during the ride, they decided to stop either at the Susquehanna River or the Chemung River to cool off. Tragically, Bonnie encountered trouble while in the water, and Mitch attempted to save her. Both of them were swept away by the river's current, and Alan assumed they had drowned. Shockingly, instead of seeking help for the teenagers, Alan claimed that he and the driver simply resumed their journey in the van. Initially, detectives found Alan's story plausible and asked him to accompany them in an attempt to identify the location where they had stopped for swimming. However, Alan was unable to pinpoint the exact spot. Undeterred, the investigators reached out to each coroner's office along both rivers mentioned by Alan to check for records of any unidentified bodies found in the water. However, none of the coroner's offices had any relevant records. Despite the lead from Alan, the case remained unresolved, leaving investigators with more questions than answers in the heartbreaking mystery of Mitch and Bonnie's disappearance. The search for Bonnie and Mitch is still ongoing. Some people believe that they may have been the victims of foul play shortly after leaving Narrowsburg, while others hold on to the hope that they could still be alive. To this day, there is no evidence to confirm whether the couple ever made it to Watkins Glen. Despite extensive efforts, Mitch's best friend Stuart has combed through thousands of pictures taken at the Summer Jam concert, but no trace of Mitch or Bonnie has been found. It's possible that they never had the chance to attend the concert they were so looking forward to. In the midst of all the uncertainty, numerous facial reconstructions have been created to depict how they might look today if they were still alive. However, their disappearance remains a mystery, leaving their loved ones and investigators with unanswered questions. There is still hope that one day, the truth about what happened on that day will be revealed. Until then, their disappearance continues to be an unsolved puzzle, keeping the memory of Bonnie and Mitch alive in the hearts of those who knew and cared for them. If you stayed till the end of this video, please leave a like and subscribe if you would like more content like this. I appreciate you watching.